Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You're watching L24 Nightly News. I'm your host, Miriam Zian, and here are your top stories. At least 20 people were killed in an Israeli airstrike while waiting to receive humanitarian aid south of Gaza City. The International Court of Justice will rule tomorrow on Israel's genocide on Gaza, and Hamas says that as long as Zionist reciprocates, it will abide by any decision issued by the World Court that calls for a ceasefire in Gaza. US and Iraq agree to begin discussions to end the presence of the US-led coalition, and details after the break. Hello again and welcome to the news. The Palestinian Ministry of Health in Gaza said that occupation forces committed a new massacre against thousands of hungry mouths who were waiting for humanitarian aid at the Kuwait roundabout south of Gaza City. A statement from the Health Ministry said at least 20 people were killed in an Israeli airstrike while waiting to receive humanitarian aid, and a further 150 people were injured while queuing for relief at the Kuwait roundabout.
وهذه هي المشاهد لإطلاق النار على المواطنين أثناء استلامهم للمساعدات الإنسانية على مفطر الكويت في حي الزيتون.
A spokesman for the Ministry of Health in Gaza, Ashraf Al-Qudra, confirmed that the health and the humanitarian situation in Al-Nasser Medical Complex is catastrophic. On Thursday, Al-Qudra confirmed in a statement that Nasser Medical Complex is operating at 10% of its human capacity in harsh and frightening conditions, pointing out that the operating rooms have run out of anesthesia and pain-relieving medications as well as food. The spokesman for the Ministry of Health in Gaza also pointed out that the amount of fuel remaining in the complex is only sufficient for less than 5 days. And the Palestinian Red Crescent said that the occupation has continued to target Al Amal Hospital for the 4th consecutive day as shelling and shooting continue in the vicinity of the hospital. The Red Crescent added in a statement that the occupation has imposed a total curfew in the vicinity of the hospital since Wednesday afternoon, preventing the movement of ambulance crews to and from the hospital, stressing that thousands of displaced people live in a constant state of terror and anxiety as a result of the continued siege and continued bombardment. And in a statement published via Telegram, the Palestinian Islamic Resistance Movement Hamas has said as long as Zionist reciprocates, it will abide by any decision issued by the International Court of Justice that calls for a ceasefire in Gaza. The statement also says that Hamas will release all of the captives it holds if Zionists release Palestinian prisoners currently held hostage. Hamas concludes in its third and final demand that the Zionist enemy must end its 18-year siege of Gaza and enter all necessary aid for population relief and reconstruction. This comes hours before the World Court issued its decision regarding the possibility of imposing emergency measures against the occupation following South Africa's lawsuit filed against it regarding the genocidal war it is waging against the Gaza Strip.
The sitting is open.
فيه مشكلتين الأولى
And the idea of a buffer zone in Gaza has been rejected by both the U.S. National Security Council and the U.S. State Department because it would effectively reduce the size of the enclave. Marwa Belhawar.
The Zionist entity has since December been moving toward the establishment of its more than half-mile buffer zone inside Gaza, along the border with Palestine, where occupation soldiers were attacked when they were busy planting mines into two buildings, which led to the death of 24 of them by a Palestinian resistance shell. The Washington Post quoted a report from Hebrew's N12 news channel, saying that Zionists have demolished about 1,100 of the 2,800 buildings that before the war stood on the land it intends to use as a buffer zone. All regional countries have rejected the buffer zone idea. Human rights groups say the destruction of civilian homes and farms could amount to war crimes, while the United States has been voicing its rejection to the creation of a buffer zone, saying that should be no permanent change to Palestinian territory. Blinken's statement was reinforced by U.S. National Security spokesperson John Kirby, who affirmed his country's categorical rejection of any reduction in the area of Gaza. The topic is one of several areas of disagreement between the Zionist entity and the USA that is bearing the burdens of the Israeli occupation's violation of international laws.
And Al-Qassam Brigade, the military wing of the Hamas Islamic Resistance Movement, announced the bombing of a house that had been trapped with explosive devices after a Zionist force took shelter in it, causing dead and wounded. Al-Qassam indicated in a statement it published on Telegram that its fighters clashed with a support force that came to the scene after the operation and killed more than 10 Zionist soldiers west of the city of Khan Yunis, south of the Gaza Strip. Also, Al-Quds Brigades, the military wing of the Islamic Jihad movement, published scenes of targeting Zionist occupation vehicles on the front lines west of the city of Khan Yunis. Al-Quds Brigade said that they were engaged in fierce clashes with machine gun and heavy weaponry with Zionist occupation soldiers and vehicles in the region. Al-Quds Brigades also published scenes of missiles it fired and said they were destroyed, or they destroyed the occupied cities and settlements surrounding the Gaza Strip. Let's take a look.
الله أكبر الله.
The occupation army acknowledged that the number of officers and soldiers injured in its ranks since the beginning of the ground attack on the Gaza Strip has reached 1,250. The occupation army added in a statement that 406 officers and soldiers are still undergoing treatment after being injured in battles in the Gaza Strip, 40 of whom are in a serious condition. The Palestinian Health Ministry announced on Thursday that a young man was killed by the occupation forces bullets in the village of Bir al-Balasha, or Bir al-Basha, south of Jenin. Local sources reported that special forces stormed the nearby area supported by the military reinforcements. They raided the martyr's house after surrounding him and executed him from zero distance with a barrage of bullets while his brother was shot and his third brother, who was a freed prisoner, was arrested.
It was a surprise. We heard the sound of an explosion outside. They were the Jews. They raided the house with a big force and they started to shoot at the windows and the doors, and we moved to the ground.
Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said that the United States policy on the Middle East has only led to tragedies in the region. Lavrov stressed in his press conference in New York that the effects of U.S. policy in the region are clearly visible to all parties over the past decade, stressing that it did not bring a better situation to the countries there.
In my view, the consequences of U.S. policy in the region are understood in much the same way by all parties over the past decade. Every adventure the United States took in the region was only because it thought it was facing security threats. Every adventure was for its basic security interests and did not bring a better situation to the countries concerned. Even some countries practically no longer exist now.
The Houthi group said that it directly hit an American warship and forced 2 American commercial ships to retreat and return during its clash with a number of American destroyers and warships in the Gulf of Aden and Bab el-Mandab. A statement from the Houthi group said that the operation took place while those ships were providing protection for the 2 American commercial ships, confirming that a number of ballistic missiles hit their targets despite the warships' attempts to intercept them.
In vindication of the oppressed Palestinian people and in support and solidarity with our brothers in the Gaza Strip, and as a response to the American-British aggression on our country, a clash occurred today between a number of American destroyers and warships in the Gulf of Aden and Bab el-Mandab, while they were protecting 2 American commercial ships. The result of the clash was as follows: a direct hit on an American vessel, forcing the 2 American commercial vessels to withdraw and return, and several of our ballistic missiles struck their targets despite warships' attempts to intercept them.
A statement by the U.S. Treasury Department on Thursday said that the United States had imposed new sanctions against the Houthi group. According to the statement, the U.S. sanctions target 4 Yemenis who provided support for the recent Houthi operations on commercial ships in the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden. For its part, the British government announced the addition of 4 new classifications to the sanctions system on Yemen. The sanctions target military leaders in the Houthi group. Iraq and the United States reached an agreement to specify the duration of the presence of the International Coalition advisors in Iraq. They also agreed to begin the gradual and deliberate reduction of their presence on Iraqi soil. A statement by the Iraqi Foreign Ministry announced the success of the government's negotiations with American counterpart. which began in August of last year and ended with the necessity of launching a higher military committee to assess the threat of the terrorist organization ISIS to the country and to directly gradually end the military mission of the international coalition against ISIS led by Washington and move to comprehensive bilateral relations. Algeria's ambassador to Kenya, Mahi Boumediene, delivered Thursday on behalf of the Algerian government a donation of enriched fertilizers that Algerian President Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune decided to give to Kenya within the usual framework of solidarity between the two countries. The Kenyan minister highlighted the importance of this solidarity initiative by President Tebboune, which would strengthen the historical relations of brotherhood and cooperation between the two countries, stressing the interest of Kenyan President William Ruto to work with his Algerian counterpart to make bilateral relations a focus for economic integration. Algerian Prime Minister Nadir Al-Arbawi received on Thursday the ambassador of the Sultanate of Oman to Algeria, Saif bin Nasser bin Rashid Al Badai. A statement by the Algerian Prime Minister explained that the two sides expressed their satisfaction with the depth of the distinguished brotherly relations between Algeria and the Sultanate of Oman and the keenness of the leaders of the two countries to continuously strengthen them in all fields. The same source added that the two sides stressed the importance of intensifying bilateral cooperation, especially in the field of investment and energy, in addition to the higher education and scientific research sectors. The Madar Holding Group, through its subsidiary Tafadis, which specializes in sugar production, refining and marketing, signed a memorandum of understanding with the U.S. company Repsol, a leader in the field of solutions and products related to the energy and infrastructure markets. The sign-in ceremony took place in the presence of representatives of Madar Holding Group and a delegation of U.S. businessmen led by the presidents of the Algerian U.S. Business Council, Ismail Shikhoun and David Wilhelm.
We've had a fantastic week here in Algeria. America is already the leading trade partner with Algeria, but it can be much, much greater. And our job as the U.S.-Algerian Business Council is to deepen and strengthen and broaden that relationship. And today's event, where we signed an MOU about an investment in a sugar factory in the south of the country, is just the beginning of I think, greater level of engagement commercially between our two countries.
Russia and Ukraine traded accusations Thursday over the crash of a military transport plane that Moscow said was carrying Ukrainian prisoners of war. Moscow accused Kiev of shooting down the plane, while Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said his country will push for an international investigation into the crash. Nabil Khazini.
In another heating episode in the conflict in Ukraine, the United Nations Security Council has become an arena where Moscow and Kiev traded accusations over the crash of a military passenger plane that the Kremlin said was carrying Ukrainian war prisoners.
This exchange agreed between Moscow and Kiev. Instead of this exchange taking place, the Ukrainian side attacked this plane with anti-aircraft missiles from the Kharkiv region, which became fatal.
Ukraine responded by casting doubt on the fact that prisoners of war were aboard and putting forward their own theories, including implying that the plane may have posed a threat. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky called for full clarity on the circumstances of the crash of a Russian plane and accused Moscow of playing with the lives of Ukrainian prisoners of war.
It is obvious that the Russians are messing with the lives of Ukrainian captives, the feelings of their relatives, and the emotions of our society.
Despite that, Ukraine says it wants to continue its prisoner swaps with Moscow, adding that it is fully committed to working together on this issue.
Russian oil company Rosneft plans to expand its presence in the Indian market and build an oil refinery there, Russian President Vladimir Putin said on Thursday. Putin said Rosneft had already or has already invested $23 billion in purchasing a network of gas stations and a port in India. The Russian president made the comments during a visit to Kaliningrad University on Thursday.
Suffice it to say that the largest foreign investment in the Indian economy, at least it was until now. Something may have changed, but the largest investment came from Russia. Our company, Rosneft, invested $23 billion in the acquisition of oil, refineries, and a network of gas stations, port, etc. They have plans for the future. They want to build a plant, and this is just one example.
And for more international news, let's follow this report by Hussam Barkan.
Colombia's government declared the disaster Thursday as firefighters tackled wildfire outside capital Bogota. The government asked for international help to combat raging wildfires that are expected to worsen in coming days due to warm, dry conditions associated with El Niño weather phenomena. Farmers in Paris region have called for a tractor blockade of roads leading into and out of the capital as they await a response from the government to their grievances over rising costs and environmental red tape. On Thursday, they blocked the A12 and A13, both main arterial roads, with other tractors converging in towns around the capital. Slovakia's parliament will fast-track debate on proposals to scrap an anti-corruption prosecutor's office and lower sentences for financial crimes after lawmakers approved the move on Thursday, despite objections and mass protests. Opposition parties have led near-weekly protests since early December, drawing tens of thousands, and nationwide rallies continued on Thursday evening with crowds chanting "Enough of Fico" and "We will not be quiet." Tourists trekked on foot towards the Machu Picchu ruins in Peru on Thursday after protests over virtual ticket sales shut down a train line connecting to the ruins. The protesters marched through the streets and blocked the train track heading to the World Heritage Site. Tourists were escorted by police as they walked along the tracks. Protesters are calling for the end of the contract between the Peruvian government and the company Join Us, who sell tickets to Machu Picchu.
Ladies and gentlemen, our program has come to an end. Thank you for joining us. And if you missed any part of our broadcast, you can always check our social media platforms. Thank you.